have my baby. I have my Swift tea mug with chai. Notes. I'm gonna tell you my birth story. Mostly I want to record this for myself to remember, but also for friends and family who are curious, want to know the full story of my labor and birth. So this is our daughter, Rayla Gray, and oh, this is her cute little fox shirt that barely fits anymore. First, I'm going to tell you my birth plan, what I wanted for my birth, and what I kind of really didn't want for my birth. I'll also tell you some things I did like to prepare for labor, and then through labor and birth. I'm 4 weeks postpartum. Tomorrow I'm 4 weeks postpartum, and this one's gonna be a month old. I can't believe it. For my prenatal care, I went to a birth center with, it's a midwife practice, and I loved it. I was so glad that I found that. I didn't know it was a thing until I became pregnant. I loved all my midwives. There were like 3 or 4 that I saw over my pregnancy. Connected to the midwife practice was a birth center. So if you don't know what that is, it's like a home-like environment. So it's like a bedroom setup. They actually have 2 different rooms in case there's 2 different people in labor. But it's a bedroom setup, so with a bed, there's a bathroom, no shower, but a toilet and sink, and there's a birthing tub. Not a blow-up one, like an actual one. So they have all of the supplies that they would need for things like stitches, or I think they can give you antibiotic for if you have group B strep, and you know, other tools needed. But yeah, no like medicine, like they don't have an epidural or anything, you know. The only like medicine they have is nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas, which can kind of just take the edge off. I wanted an unmedicated birth, and I wanted to have a water birth, so I wanted to be in the tub, ideally, unless I was like not feeling it in the moment. My 3 most important preferences or hopes for my birth experience were respect the golden hour, skin to skin, bonding, breastfeeding, which, yeah, all 3 of these things like partially happened. A calm environment with like music, candles, dimmed lighting, as long as it's preferred in the moment, and using water for comfort and most likely for birthing as well. Are you getting sleep? It was also in the plan to have my husband, people there, my husband and my best friend Josie, and also my doula Kathy. So, and they all were there. Things like aromatherapy. I did use my calming sleep essential oil, which I love for anxiety. I did have music, hands-on comfort measures, eating and drinking, pictures. Josie took some pictures throughout. I wanted to know when the head was crowning, touch my baby's head, and I wasn't sure if I would want to see it with a mirror, but I did in the moment. I was like, sure, why not? I said I would like to catch the baby. That was more like if I was in the water. I wanted to have delayed cord clamping, and not just like a minute or 2 like they usually would in the hospital, but like till it stops pulsating. The midwives actually said they do until it's like flat and white. We did plan to do like, okay, the vitamin K injection, the erythromycin ointment, and the newborn screen. Those are all great. What I really didn't want, which was left unsaid, kind of, but in my head, I did not want to go to the hospital. I have some trauma / bad feelings around the hospital, pretty much just because my dad had cancer and died in the hospital when I was 8, so I just kind of like left bad feelings. I didn't want an epidural. I knew I could do it without. Yeah. I didn't want an epidural / really any medication. I was considering the nitrous oxide at the birth house, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want vacuum or forceps done. I just heard bad things. I've heard it's like older practice, you know. I didn't want to push or deliver my baby on my back because I've heard it's like working against gravity, you know, kind of pushing uphill. And I did not want a C-section. That was like the biggest thing, I think. I was like, I really would like to deliver vaginally. Oh, I should give a little warning. This is a birth story. It might be a little graphic. I might say words like blood or mucus, you know, vagina, because it's a birth story. So, some things I did to prepare for labor and birth. I'd say the biggest thing throughout my pregnancy was hypnobirthing. If you've never heard of hypnobirthing, it might sound a little weird, but it's not, I promise. Basically, the hypno part of it means like a self-hypnosis, as in getting into a really relaxed state. So it was a lot about practicing relaxation, using things like imagery, deep breathing, things like that. But it also included mentally preparing, being educated about birth and what is possible, what is likely, and kind of changing your mindset about birth to be more positive. Yeah, a big part of it is learning that fear is not necessary in birth because it's a normal, natural thing. People give birth every day. They've been doing it for all of humanity. And there's no need to be afraid of it. Another thing is changing words like pain, like trying to think about it as pressure, or changing the word contractions to like surges or waves, just to give it some more positive language. And yeah, that's probably not the best description. I'll put like a link, I think, to a better description in the description box. There's also physical practices like stretches and having your partner help with like practice massages like on your back that might help during labor, or like, I don't know if you've seen the thing where the woman's on their hands and knees and the husband or partner like uses a scarf around their belly to like kind of hold their belly up a little bit but also swing back and forth, because that can feel really good. Yeah, anyway, I have a book called Holistic Hypnobirthing, which I loved, and it had all these things in it. I also took a hypnobirthing course online through the Positive Birth Company. Oh, the other thing, I mean, still hypnobirthing, was there's a app called Christian Hypnobirthing app or something like that. And you have to pay for most of it, but there's one track, like a listening track, that is free, and it's positive affirmations, and they're Christian oriented, and so I listen to that a lot too, especially like in the shower when I'm already like relaxing and have the time. I just put it on and would repeat them to myself too while I was listening, and then I remembered them later after a lot of repetition. Some of my favorites are like women all around the world are birthing with you, and like God has the perfect time scale for your baby's birth. There's some things in the few weeks leading up to birth that people talk about doing to try to induce labor or make labor easier. One of them is eating 6 dates a day, starting around 36 or 37 weeks. I tried this. It's like the texture, just like, I don't know. It's very chewy and felt weird in my mouth. But the biggest thing, the thing that made me stop doing the dates, is I realized they were giving me terrible heartburn. Like, I don't understand why, because you wouldn't think they're acidic, but I just had the worst heartburn after I would eat them. So yeah, I did that for like 2 weeks maybe, and then I stopped because I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do the heartburn especially. I think the one other thing I tried one time was perineal massage. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But I tried it, but I had trouble reaching around my bump to reach down there, and I just got frustrated. Maybe it was just like I was frustrated that day, but I was like, I don't want to do this, so I didn't. Also, I had a doula, and so with my doula, we had 2 different meetings before my birth. And so she helped me make my birth plan. Oh, another thing, this is physical, duh, but I did the Body Ready method. It's like an exercise sort of program, also has like a mental component, but I mostly did the exercises. It was like videos, about 30 minutes each. I did them 2 to 3 times a week. It was sort of like yoga with some extra like strengthening things, but it was specifically geared towards pregnant women, and it followed you week by week through your pregnancy. And so it was like, at this week 28, do these exercises, and they overall helped your body to prepare for birth, but also like manage pain in pregnancy. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. I'm growing so much. Okay. But I remember that because she recommended the Body Ready method, and she was like becoming a teacher sort of thing for it. In our second meeting with Kathy, she helped us do some physical movements, such as the scarf belly thing that I talked about. Also like a lift and tuck thing where Aiden stands behind me and like holds my belly up, and I tuck my pelvis under, which helps with back pressure, back pain pressure, and also like it's one of the ways to help baby move through the pelvis. So she showed me different ways to help baby wherever they were in my pelvis, which you can kind of tell because of how you're acting in labor or something. I don't know. I'm no expert. That's another thing I wanted to disclaimer about. I'm no medical expert whatsoever. Don't take any of this as advice. Always talk to your doctor or your provider. I'm just giving my experience. So, when I was 38 weeks pregnant, that's when I started my maternity leave. My mom actually gave birth to me when she was 38 weeks pregnant, so I kind of was hoping / expecting to go into labor early. Did not happen, but I was prepared, and I'm glad I had that time to just prepare my home more, do some cooking and baking while I could. Some things that like show labor might be starting soonish. Losing your mucus plug. Pretty much on my due date, I started losing my mucus plug. So it's just like thicker discharge. So I walked almost every day from about 39 weeks. Sometimes on my walk I would get cramping in my like lower side, sometimes around the front, sometimes in the back. And so I thought and hoped that maybe that was labor starting. Was not, because it was more constant. It was not coming in waves, and pretty much either during my walk or right after my walk it would go away. So just random. Maybe my body preparing. Loose stool can be an indicator of labor coming up. So my due date was January 29th. January 31st, started having loose stools every day. I went into labor on February 3rd at night. Also, bloody show is an indication of labor coming, which sounds gross and scary, but it's not, and it's not actually that bloody. Usually it's pink or brown, sometimes red coloration in your discharge, in your mucus plug basically. I started having that on the 30th, the day after my due date, and then I was having it day before I went into labor and the day I went into labor. One other thing about leading up to labor is my mother-in-law, Aiden's mom, and his brother, they came to visit, and they were hoping kind of like help out with baby if baby was here. So they came on January 26th, 3 days before my due date. And they stayed through February 3rd. So there was no baby by then, obviously. And so we hung out, we had a good time. I enjoyed spending time with them. I think they did too. And Aiden too. He was working throughout the week, but still, we spent time together. But I think it's just so funny because I've heard, you know, like, you won't go into labor until you're like relaxed or, you know, have all of your to-do lists done. And so I just wonder if like knowing that they were coming kind of left me feeling a little stressed, not totally relaxed, and that's why I didn't have the baby before that. And then literally they left Saturday morning, February 3rd, and I started going to labor that night. So that's just kind of funny. I started noticing contractions, waves, surges, around 10:30. I had some mild cramping and it was off and on. I didn't really time them at that point. I was like, okay, this is very mild, you know. They were maybe, if I had to guess, like 8 to 12 minutes apart, like, you know. They were there, but not too frequent. Yeah, I wrote, it felt like mild period cramps across my lower front abdomen, slowly intensifying a bit and then backing off. So, when I realized that I think this might be labor starting, I was like, we should go to bed soon so I can try to sleep before it gets worse. We went to bed. I only slept like an hour maybe. I think like 12:30 to 1:30 or so I slept, and then I was awake and could not sleep. Not because I was like in a lot of pain, but I think I was just like excited and wanted to pay attention to my body and what was happening, I guess. But yeah, thinking about, oh, when's she gonna be born? How fast is it gonna happen? You know, things like that. Like I said, things might be TMI, but I had more loose stool at 3 a.m. and again at 4:45, which is great because I know it was my body emptying itself out, preparing for pushing the baby out, and I did not poop during pushing. So that was lovely. I had stronger cramping contractions, woke up at 2:45 hungry. I started timing my contractions probably like 4 o'clock-ish. Timed them for about an hour. They were like 4 to 6 minutes apart. So I texted my doula. She was not awake. So I called her at 5 a.m. And I told her what was going on, and she was like, okay, good, sounds like you're in early labor. Let's check in again in like a few hours. I was like, okay. You know, I was really hoping it would progress fast. I was like, okay, maybe around 8 or something, I'll call you. So she's like, okay, sounds good. I don't remember what I did then. I think I just laid in bed. I tried to rest even though I couldn't sleep, which was good. I woke Aiden up at 5 a.m. too and was like, I'm in labor. And he's like, why didn't you wake me earlier? And I wanted to let him sleep because one of us should get some sleep. Yeah. So I also texted Josie at this point and I was just like, hey, just to let you know, I think I'm in early labor. No rush, but I might text you later on in the morning to come over. Around 8, I talked to Kathy again. I was like, yeah, you're getting a little more intense. I think I'd like you to come over. And I told Josie to come over when she gets, you know, when she's ready. It wasn't like urgent. But then I got in the bath for comfort and relaxation. It was very nice. They came over both around like 9, I think. 9 or 9:30. And we hung out. I tried to just kind of act normal, chat. I was breathing through contractions. I could talk a little bit, but I wanted to focus on breathing. Some things that I did do throughout early labor and maybe into active labor a little bit is breathe through my contractions. So I did like breathe in for 4 and out for 7 or 8. And if you do that like 4 times in a row, it's about a minute, which is about how long contractions are usually. I didn't put music on at home, but I did watch the Great British Baking Show. That's kind of like my comfort show. I used the yoga ball more, not really to sit on, but to kind of lean forward on. Like I was on hands and knees, but not my hands. Like I leaned my chest on the yoga ball and let my belly hang. And that felt good through contractions. I tried to eat some while I was home especially. Like I had yogurt. I don't know if I had a sandwich. I wasn't really that hungry though. I was also got a little bit nauseous throughout the afternoon, and Kathy had some lemon essential oil that she had me sniff, which was helpful. I had Josie like say my affirmations. I put affirmations on cards, some of the Christian hypnobirthing ones, and I had her say them to me and then I would say them back, which was good. That was really nice and helpful for my mental state. To help progress labor, Kathy encouraged me to move rather than sit. So we did some on the stairs outside my apartment, like sideways stair stepping. So I would step down the stairs 1 at a time and then step up the stairs 2 at a time sideways, and then switch sides. And that is to like help the baby move down through the pelvis, kind of rock her because it's like asymmetrical walking. At 11:35 a.m. my water broke. Just before that, I had called the midwife and been like, okay, just so you know, I'm in labor and my contractions are like 4 to 5 minutes apart, about a minute long each. And yeah, she was like, okay, let's check back in about an hour, unless your water breaks. And so then right after that phone call, I went to the bathroom. My water broke. I had been wearing an adult diaper since like, I think after I got out of the bath, so like around 9 a.m. Just in case my water broke. And I'm glad I had it on because I was about to sit on the toilet, but my water broke in the diaper, and I quickly sat down after that. But I was like, whoa, it felt like a gush, I guess, like almost like felt like a pop, but not like a big pop. Yeah, very strange feeling. And no one tells you this, but you continue to leak water until you give birth. So I went through a lot of the adult diapers in labor. I didn't use them after birth, but yeah, very, very helpful throughout labor after my water broke. The one thing that was concerning is that my waters were not clear like they should be. They were yellowish. So right after my water broke and I was done in the bathroom, I called the midwife again, told her my water broke. She said that if it's yellow, it's not too concerning, but to keep an eye on it. If it turns green or brownish, that's more concerning, and she would want me to come in right away. But for now, the plan was to still like an hour later check in, and then we'd probably meet at the birth house. I'm just gonna check my timeline again. We went to the birth house around 1:30. So it was like 2 hours after my water broke. Midwife M met me there. She did a cervical check, and I was only 3 to 4 centimeters dilated. Sad. So, and they don't let you stay there unless you're like 6 centimeters dilated to an active labor, just because they don't have like all the staff that a hospital does. There's just a few midwives, you know, and so they don't want to have to stay there like a full day. So she sent me home, which was very sad. I was really hoping that wouldn't happen because I've heard of that happening to people going to the hospital being sent home, but it happened. And so I think that was when Kathy had me do the stairs to help progress labor more. What else? Yeah. Oh, I was also 80% effaced, which great, and baby's at station 0, which means even with my cervix, not above and not past my cervix yet. Oh, she gave me an herbal tincture. So like a mix of herbs. I don't know exactly, but it was a little like shot drink to take to help me maybe get some sleep. And I think I did sleep maybe an hour or so, and then rested a little bit longer in bed with Aiden. He wanted to sleep too, and I think Josie and Kathy were out here just hanging out, chilling. So we did that. Around 7:30 we went back to the birth house. When I got there, she said I was 6 to 7 centimeters dilated. Great. Active labor. I could stay. Cool. She wanted to do a little bit of monitoring on baby just because there was some meconium in my waters. So she, like during contractions, like 2 contractions at a time, she would listen to baby's heartbeat with like a stethoscope. She did that like every half an hour or so. So one of the times she heard that baby's heart rate decelerated during my contraction, and she said that's a little bit worrying. We'll keep listening. If it does it again, we'll talk about what we're gonna do. But to help me progress even more, she had me do a Miles circuit. If you haven't heard of that, it's like 3 different positions that you do for half an hour each. So first was I lay on the bed face down with like my butt in the air but like my chest on the bed, and this was to help baby come back up a little bit rather than pushing against my cervix. That's because my cervix was like to the side kind of, which is not ideal, and she thinks like baby's head was kind of like tilted or something. So she wanted to help baby's head come back up and then go back in a better position. So I stayed in that position for half an hour, and then I laid on my side with a peanut ball between my knees for another half an hour, and that was to help baby like get in a better position again. And then the third half an hour you stand up and move, either doing like lunges or like sitting on the yoga ball and like moving your hips around to help baby go back down. Yes, so I did that. Laying on my side, let me tell you, was the most painful way at that point for me to be in labor. the most painful position. So that was not fun, but I wanted to progress labor, so I did it. Yeah. Let me also tell you some comfort measures I did at the birth house. I did put music on while I was there. I had a Christian playlist, like worship music, that I listened to kind of throughout my 3rd trimester, to like get used to the songs and like so that they would be more comforting when I was more like in stress, I guess. So yeah, listen to that. Josie helped me do more affirmations. I think I did some more of essential oils, the lemon, and maybe my calming sleep one. I'm not sure. And I did moving, like walking around, swaying. I did the birth ball. Yes. This time around at the birth house, I was with midwife Elle. So she was there the whole time. So after the mile circuit, she did another cervical check. She said I was about 8 centimeters dilated. And she hadn't wanted me to get in the birth tub before that because sometimes if you get too relaxed it can stall labor. But around 8 centimeters she was like, okay, we can get in the tub. I feel good about that. So while she was filling the tub, we did some more sideways stairs at the birth house. Sorry, I'm getting so tired talking. Once I got in the water, it felt so good. It was so like relaxing for my body. Contractions felt better in the water. Yeah, it was just all around better. But I was feeling a little bit worried because the midwife was a little worried about baby's heart decelerations during my contractions. So she wanted to listen while I was in the water again, and she did. Baby's heart was decelerating again. Not every time, but like some of the time, which was still worrying. She was like, let me check you again, and if I don't think we're gonna have this baby in the next like hour, I'm gonna transfer you to the hospital. Yeah, so she checked me again. She said I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. She was like, do you feel pushy at all? Like, you need to push? I was like, not really. She was like, let's try to do some pushes, see if anything happens. So I tried like once or twice. Nothing really happened. One of my like fears, I guess, going into labor is that I wouldn't know how to push. She was like, I really think because of meconium staining and the heart decelerations that we should transfer you to the hospital. And I was not happy about that. I was really scared because, like I said, I have bad associations with the hospital. Hospitals in general. But I accepted because I wanted my baby to be safe. I wanted myself to be safe, but I mean mostly baby was the concern. So she called an ambulance. She had also, like, she really, it seemed like, thought I could have had the baby in the next hour or so. So much so that she called the second midwife. I think there might have also been a birth assistant, or the second midwife was the birth assistant. I'm not sure. But regardless, midwife M came back to assist her with my birth. Which also, midwife M was my favorite. I don't know why, I just felt like I had a good connection with her. So I was glad to see her again one more time, but she was like, yeah, I'm really sorry that this is happening, but you know, what we want most is for your safety, for baby's safety. So it was nice to have a little reassurance from her. So an ambulance came. I've never been in an ambulance before, so that was terrifying. I mean, I got dressed, obviously, but I didn't want to put a coat on or anything. I just put like a blanket over me, I guess. I don't know. Because I was warm, but then I was shivering also because I was anxious. But also then when we went outside it was cold, so. But yeah. I went in the ambulance. Midwife L came with me in the ambulance. They apparently like to have the midwife come rather than like your partner in case you have the baby on the way, even though we were like 5 minutes from the hospital, but still. Because again, they weren't sure how close I was to having this baby. So we went to the hospital. We got there around like 1 a.m. on Monday, February 5th. Aiden and Kathy and Josie drove separately. They got into my room like around 1:30. A nurse checked me when I got there, checked my cervix, and said I was around 8 centimeters dilated. I was like, huh, okay. And at that time, I think midwife L was still there with me. And they said my station was 0. So baby was still even with my cervix. You know, I was there. I think I did some bouncing on a yoga ball. They hooked me up to an IV, which I still have a scar from, which is interesting. But hooked me up to an IV and started me on fluids, which is just like normal. They do that for every birth or laboring person. But I was still able to move around. They put an external monitor on my belly to monitor baby and my contractions. So baby's heart rate was lower down there and my contraction monitor was up here. It kept like flipping and like not being in the right spot though. That was a struggle throughout the rest of my labor. I was laboring for a while. Then I think the same nurse checked me again and thought that I was close to pushing. So that was great. But then, I guess just to be sure, I don't know, another nurse checked my cervix. And this nurse was great, not in this moment, but she was great throughout the time I was there. Nurse Z, but she looked at me and said, Sam, I hate to tell you this, but you're only 6 centimeters dilated. And I was like, what? Excuse me? What? How? And this was at 5 a.m. so I'd been there like 4 hours. They said that like you can't undilate, so therefore they think that like baby's head was pushing against my cervix and like stretching it, so it seemed like my cervix was bigger, wider, more dilated than it was actually. I don't know how these things work, but I was only 6 centimeters dilated. So this means I had been 6 centimeters dilated from 7:30 p.m. on February 4th until 5:30 a.m. and longer on February 5th. So that was great. At this point, I had been laboring for over 24 hours. Not quite 36, but 10:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. I don't know what that is. And I was tired. I had barely slept in that time, like maybe 2 hours I slept separately. I had been in active labor for almost 12 hours and I was so done. Everyone had me thinking that I was really close to pushing and getting this baby out, and then they were like, you're only 6 centimeters dilated. So I said I wanted a C-section. I was crying hysterically, so distressed, and I was like, I want a C-section, please. However, It was around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and the nurses were like, shift change is about to happen. New nurses and doctors are gonna come on, so we need to wait for that. I was like, fine. Great. Waited for shift change to happen. The new doctor came to see me as I requested, and she was not empathetic or sympathetic. Either one would have been great. At all. She was very matter of fact and was like, I do not believe a C-section is indicated at this time. I think it would pose more risks than benefits, and I really think that an epidural would help you a lot, help you get some rest, and help you rethink your wish for a C-section. I was like, whatever, fine. I just wanted rest, sleep, I guess. So we did that. The anesthesiologist came around 8 a.m. and placed the epidural. He left. Also, he was great. I have no qualms with him. He was a very funny guy and helped me feel a little bit more lighthearted and just better. So he was great. However, the first epidural did not work. So the nurse kept checking in with me. I was like, no, I still feel contractions full on. However, they had given me fentanyl, I believe, for pain management before the epidural started working, before the anesthesiologist even came, which was good. That definitely helped take the edge off a little bit. At like an hour and a half or 2 hours after my first epidural was placed, anesthesiologist came back. He was like, I am so sorry that this didn't work for you. I'm really sorry. Like, sometimes, you know, it just doesn't hit the right nerve or whatever happens with an epidural. Also, it didn't hurt to get the epidural. It felt like maybe like a little pinch. I was very surprised, but it didn't hurt. I was like, cool, great. So he replaced it, and I laid down, and he stayed in the room because he wanted to make sure it worked that time. And a few minutes later, the nurse was like, how were those last 2 contractions for you? And I was like, I didn't know I had contractions. She's like, great. And he was like, my work here is done. Yeah. So my legs had started to go a little bit numb, but not too bad. I also was sleepy almost immediately. So I went to sleep. From about 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. I slept off and on. The nurse had to wake me every hour and a half or so, hour and a half, to change positions. I guess it's not good to stay in the same position when you're having an epidural. My legs definitely went numb, but most of the time I was sleeping, so I didn't really care. It didn't bother me. They were tingly, like prickly feeling, and like I could move my legs somewhat, but I couldn't always feel that I was moving them. It was strange. Around 4 p.m. they came back. A nurse wanted to check me again. She checked my cervix, and I was 10 centimeters dilated. Yay! Woo! And she was like, if you want, we can start pushing right now. And I was like still waking up and also like scared of pushing. And so I was like, and she was like, or if you want, we could come back in like half an hour and start pushing. I was like, let's do that. I just needed to like wake up, mentally prepare a little bit. And she was like, baby's a little bit high still at like a -1 station, so like a centimeter above my cervix. She was like, it'd be great if baby was a little lower, so we'll sit you up in the bed, and you know, you just sit there for the next half an hour and baby might go a little lower. So we did that. They came back at 4:30 and were like, Okay, time to start pushing. Hi, it's the next day. Bless you. Bless you. She's a double sneezer. I was really tired yesterday from talking, I guess, and I had to make dinner, and yeah, so here I am today. Nurse C helped me push, kind of coached me through pushing, which again, this is something I was kind of opposed to before I was in labor, but also kind of not, because I was afraid of pushing. I felt like I wouldn't know how to do it. So yeah, in the moment especially, I was really grateful that she was helping me through it. She said we would do some practice pushing at first, and I was like, okay. At this point I still had my epidural on, and my legs were like had some feeling, but not totally. Like, they were like very tingly. I couldn't move them that much. So I'm not really sure I could feel what I was doing or pushing or whatever. I didn't feel like I had to push. So she, I think she had me, and I've heard that nurses will do this, like put their fingers in your vagina and tell you to like push them out. I think she did that or something along those lines. And I had trouble doing it at first, like finding the right spot, I guess. But anyway, this is probably TMI. For about 2.5 hours, they said probably because of the epidural. I don't know, because I started, once I was like moving and such, I started to get feeling back in my legs pretty quickly. So like, I'm not sure when, time was a blur, but I definitely got like full feeling back in my legs, and I assume everywhere down there at some point. Maybe it was by the end of those 2-ish hours. One thing I really appreciated about the hospital I was at, the nurses I was with, is that they had me try a lot of different pushing positions. Part of which I think was due to my doula, partly. I think that they wanted to have me try different positions anyway, but my doula Kathy gave different suggestions for positions as well. A big one I remember is like a tug-of-war sort of thing. So it's on my back with my legs up in stirrups, but they had a bar like above my bed. And then I would use like a towel or a blanket wrapped around the bar to pull while I pushed. And another variation is like Kathy or Aiden would be on the other end of the towel holding it while I pull on it. I think that one was helpful. They had me do like hands and knees on the bed. However, we would like put the back of the bed up so that I could kind of lean over like I would on the yoga ball, like put my chest down. We did pushing on both sides, while like the nurse like held up my leg that was, you know, in the air. Yeah, all sorts of things. The most effective though ended up just being on my back with my legs up and like wide, I suppose, like my knees wide, and kind of pulling, not necessarily pulling back, but I was holding like behind my knees, and I just like had the most power in that position. I did have more progress with getting her like little head out when I was on hands and knees, but I couldn't sustain that position for a long time. I ended up pushing for 8 hours total. So I was pushing from 4:30 p.m. on February 5th to 12:35 a.m. on February 6th. A full work day of pushing. Normally, the doctor told me after, normally for any mom, they wouldn't let her push more than 4 hours For a first-time mom, they usually don't let them push more than 3 hours. So why did they let me push 8 hours? I believe it was because I kept making progress. It was slow progress, but it was progress. And they also said like the first 2.5 hours weren't effective. So there was that. Plus, once I had made it so far with getting her head out, if they had decided to then do a C-section, they'd have to pull her back out of my birth canal. Yeah. So I think since I was making progress, and we were both doing okay, you know, our vitals were steady. And so they let me keep going, and they said they believed that I could do it. So I think that's pretty cool. And I'm glad that I didn't have a C-section in the end. I know I was asking for it at one point because I was just so exhausted and done, but I'm glad that I ended up not having it. Because that means that I can try for a birth center birth for my next baby. Assuming I get pregnant again, Lord willing, and if I feel like I can. I think I will, but you know, not anytime soon. Back to the birth. Around 9:45, the doctor, the OBGYN, came in and watched me push a few times. And I guess because her head wasn't past my pelvic bone yet, it kept coming and bobbing back, coming, bobbing back, which they said is normal, but it was going on for a while, obviously. The doctor suggested a vacuum assistance, which isn't like a vacuum. It's more like a suction cup that they put on baby's head, and kind of pull on it, to help them get further, in this instance past my pubic bone. And you know, I've heard not necessarily bad things, but I've heard that vacuum and forceps are like older strategies, and not the best. And the doctor acknowledged that. She was like, I wouldn't normally suggest this, but I think in your instance it would help a lot. So I was like, yeah, sure. And she said, you know, we would only do it 3 times at most, because otherwise there is the possibility of damage to your baby. So I was like, great. I trusted her. So the doctor did the vacuum on her head, you know, put the suction cup on her head. And she did end up doing it 3 times. The issue was the meconium in my waters was making her head more slippery. And also she has a good amount of hair, which was also making it more slippery. So she would pull on the suction, and then before she was like finished pulling, I guess, it would slip off. And it did that every time. She did it 3 times. Yeah, so it did help her make progress, but not as much as they hoped, and it didn't help her get past my pelvic bone, but she did get a little bit more down, out. At 10:45, the nurses / doctor asked the anesthesiologist to turn down my epidural because they were worried I couldn't feel enough to push. Although, like I said, by this point, I think I had at least most of the feeling back in my legs and lower body. But, you know, they wanted to try turning it down, which was fine. But after a little while, I did start having pain again with contractions. So I think they gave me something else to help with pain, maybe fentanyl again, I forget. Also, this whole time, basically, or at least from like when I got the epidural, I think, they were giving me Pitocin, which was to help my contractions be more frequent, bless you, be more frequent and stronger. They apparently weren't as strong as they would hope for me to be pushing. They also had asked me at some point if I wanted to use the mirror to see what was happening down there, see baby's head, which was starting to poke out at that point. I was like, sure, why not? Which was cool, and I liked that I did that. However, after a few different times of them being like, look in the mirror, look, your baby's head's coming more, it's poking out more, it just felt a little bit like false hope after a while, because it was taking so long. Along the same lines, so many of the nurses and the doctor and my birth team, like Aiden, Josie, Kathy, I think mostly Kathy, but I don't remember, were encouraging me that, oh, you're so close, you're so close. And after so long of people telling me that, I was like, please stop telling me that, because obviously it's been hours and hours and I was not close when you first told me I was close. I also did get to feel her head as she was coming out, which was cool. Again, this was like a long process. There was plenty of time for me to feel her head, but I'm really glad that I did it, that I felt her head and I saw her head, because it's so amazing. It was so weird to see, to look at, seeing that that's my body and that's my baby coming out of it. So weird. So like surreal and strange, but also amazing. Like, throughout my pregnancy and now, I'm like constantly amazed that like God grew this baby inside of me from 2 little cells, and that my body like handled that and did that and pushed her out, and like it's just crazy amazing. Yeah. So right into the next day, February 6th, she was getting really close to coming out, I guess, and the doctor told me that she could see that my, like a tendon, or like the skin, I guess my perineum, was very tight. It was stretched to the limit, and she thought that it would not be able to stretch more, and that if we didn't do an episiotomy, that it would burst and rip really badly. So she asked me if I'd be okay with an episiotomy. Again, this is one of the things that I was like, I've heard bad things, you know, but in that moment, and the doctor explained it really well, I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. So on my next contraction, she cut just a little snip, and like, I think in that same contraction, like with the next push, baby was out. She came out all at once. I've heard a lot of people, it's like head comes out and then body comes out, but no, she came out all at once. And it felt so weird. I could feel something. It, yes, felt really weird feeling her like whole body come out. And she wasn't crying, which is fine. Babies don't always cry and breathe right away. It might take a minute or two, but she was like wiggling around. And they had the internal monitor. Well, I guess when she was like, her head was coming out, they didn't have the monitor on her. But anyway, but her heart rate was okay. She was very covered in poop, so she physically looked grayish brown. Josie says that also her skin looked gray. She did have a couple stitches, I think only 2. I finally birthed Ducky, which was her in utero nickname. We didn't choose a name until she was born. At 12:35 a.m. on February 6th. So I was in labor for at least part of 4 days. Wild. 50 hours of labor and 8 hours of pushing. Everyone kept telling me I was a rock star. I wish I didn't have to be a rock star. But yeah, I'm amazed that I did it. I'm glad I did it. I don't know a lot about APGAR scores, but I'm pretty sure it can be out of 10, and there's like 5 different factors they look at, and each factor is scored from 0 to 2. And they do it at like, I had to look all this up, but they do it at 1 minute and 5 minutes after birth, and if they're not above like a 7, I think, at 5 minutes, then they'll do it every 5 minutes afterward. Her first APGAR score at 1 minute was like a 1, I'm pretty sure, and then her second one at 5 minutes was a 2, and then 5 minutes later it was a 9. So she got there, just took a little bit extra time. I was really worried whenever they took her away to the warming table. They were rubbing her off, like whenever they put her on my tummy, they were rubbing her off to try to clean her and like suctioning poop out of her mouth, and it was just so much all at one time. It was very overwhelming. And then they took her to the warming table to finish cleaning her up and getting stuff out of her mouth and nose. And they did have to give her some oxygen to get her breathing. But her heart rate was fine through the whole thing, so that's good. But I was so scared when they took her away. Josie says that I only asked like twice, but I felt like I was continually asking, is she okay? Is she okay? Like, what's happening? Because that's what I was thinking, I guess. Yeah. But she was alright, and the nurse, or someone, I don't know, kept telling me, she's okay, they're just helping her out, she's gonna be alright. And it was just so hard to believe because I couldn't see it myself. Yeah, it was so scary. But right whenever she was born, I believe, Aiden came over to my shoulders and he was like hugging me, and he was worried about me. And this is so funny because, you know, I'd gone through 50 hours of labor, and the thing that got him was the episiotomy, and he was so scared that it hurt me even more than I already had to hurt. And so he was, I think he started crying, and he was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was just worried about baby. I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And when he finally told me that, I was like, no, I didn't feel anything. They put like numbing cream and I did not feel anything. I heard a snip, a few snips, but I didn't feel anything. So he was okay. He was just, I think it was a lot. And plus with very little sleep. Yeah. While she was over at the table getting helped, they were stitching me up, and a nurse like made like a joke, like an offhand comment or something, and I laughed a little bit, and that's what made my placenta come out. I think it's funny that I laughed my placenta out. Oh, she also had the cord around her neck when she came out, which they're pretty sure that's why she was having decelerations in her heartbeat during contractions. It's very normal for babies to have the cord around their neck, but so they just slipped it off when she came out. No worries. I didn't even see it. Then they brought her over once she was good. They brought her over for me for skin to skin time, and it was so lovely. Looking at my baby, finally getting to meet her, see her, all her little details. I don't remember like everything, but I do know that Aiden did skin to skin with her. It was very sweet. We have pictures from that. It was very cute. Your daddy holding you. She was born 8 pounds and 15 ounces, so almost 9 pounds. And she's 22 inches long. So we were discharged at like noon on the 7th. I think that's it. I'm a mom and I'm so happy and in love with her. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments, or if you know me, you can text me or whatever. Yeah, thanks for watching.